Hey guys, hope you're having a good New Year so far. I've reached out to the BC hunting community probably about a month and a bit ago now just to get some feedback. What I found through conversations on the forums and through messages that I've gotten is there's a lot of new hunters, it seems, the last couple of years that have kind of come to hunting from a more non traditional background. So when I learned to hunt, when a lot of us learned to hunt, it was something that our dads or our grandfathers did, uncles, so on and so forth, and it was passed down to us that way. Whereas a lot of new hunters maybe don't have that, and they're struggling a little bit to figure out exactly how to fine tune everything, get into it, and kind of exactly how to navigate it, right? So what I wanted to do was put something together that gives you guys the bare kind of the bare bones, the basics of what you're going to need to get rolling, get out there, get in the woods. Hopefully save you guys some time, some money, and basically just streamline the process. Now, as far as actually getting your licensing and your firearms license, your core, your hunting, hunter education program, all that, I did do a video on that last year, last spring bear season. So you guys can refer to that. I'll pop a link in the description here. That's a good place for you guys to start. So if you kind of haven't gotten that far yet, go there, start with that, figure the licensing and everything out, and then you can worry about the kind of the gear end of it. I mean, there's a lot of gear involved, and there's a lot of money you can spend. I'm gonna try and cut this back, save you guys some bucks, tell you what you need, what you don't need, what you can do without, where you should spend a little extra, where you can save some, and hopefully get you guys out on a kind of a budget that's friendly for everybody to get out in the woods and hopefully get you guys rolling. So we'll kick off with that, and this is going to be, I'm going to make a three-part series, 3 or 4 part series. I'm going to try and limit this to 15 to 20 minutes each. Pop out 3 or 4 of these, break down what's going on. So on the first one here, we're going to touch on gear. In the later ones, we're going to touch on tracking, basically where you can find game, what sort of sign you're looking for, aftershot care, and then also kind of the ethics and that end of it that goes with it all. Okay. So like I said, there's a ton of gear involved with this. I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible, so understand there's going to be a lot of gear that I'm not going to touch on, but I'm going to try and address the basics of it to get you guys rolling. So the first thing I'm going to touch on here, I've got bits and pieces of my original setup when I first started hunting, and then I've got bits and pieces of my current setup. I'm going to tell you what I keep using even all these years later, and stuff that I've upgraded to, what you can upgrade to, and what honestly you probably don't need to worry about. So the first thing I'm going to touch on is rifles. Now my very first rifle for hunting here it's a Savage Axis in 243. It's a budget rifle. I want to say I was about $420 at the time out the door, and that was with this Weaver scope on it that's still on it. It's not... It's clunky. I have some gripes that go along with this rifle, the bolt in particular. But as far as functionality goes, it's very functional. It got me into the woods on a budget, and it's taken lots of deer, it's taken bears. I've used it for predator control around the farm. I have no complaints as far as the actual use of it goes. It's got a decent trigger on it. Like I said, the bolt and the action are a little bit clunky. So understand that if you're spending $400 on a rifle, you're not going to get premium action and premium components. It's going to be a little bit kind of sluggish and kind of clunky. But there's honestly no reason you can't save money on a rifle and head out into the woods. What I would caution you on, and what I would ask you to spend a little more on maybe, is glass. Now these are the optics that came with it at the time. The budget was super tight, so I stuck with the Weaver that was on it. And it worked fine. It did its job. I have no complaints as far as that goes. But what I would suggest is, if you have the ability and you can, $400, $600 on a rifle is fine. There's lots of decent rifles in that price range. Budget to use roughly the same amount of money on the glass. So if you're going to spend $400 or $500 on a rifle, try and spend $400 to $500 on the glass that goes on top of it. Not necessarily that there's anything wrong with the Weaver glass that was on this one when I bought it. It is budget optics. But you're going to notice a big difference in low light conditions. So especially dawn and dusk, when a lot of hunting happens, especially deer, moose, other ungulates are big fans of dawn and dusk. You're going to notice a big difference between budget glass and premium glass. And it's going to widen the scope and the time frame that you're able to successfully make a shot where you might not be able to. There was a lot of times where I had to call it quits with this rifle here, where with my new rifle and my new optics on other stuff, it wouldn't have been a problem. So it can be up to 45 minutes of a time difference, so that's a big deal. What I upgraded to since then, I've had a few rifles since then. This is my go-to at the moment, and this is a Tikka T3 in 7 mag. First thing you notice is the action is far smoother. This is probably the smoothest action of any rifle that I've owned, I think. I have no complaints with this rifle. It has a great barrel on it, a great action, and it's very reliable, and it's been very good. That being said, I spent a fair bit on the rifle. I still spent more on the glass. Currently, this one here has got a Swarovski Z3 on it. You don't need to go out and spend thousands of dollars on optics, but if you're able to, this would be where I spend money first. So what I want you to kind of get out of this, a budget rifle is okay. It's going to get the job done. It's going to get you in the woods, but try and spend more on the glass if you absolutely can. Even with $500 on some glass, which will get you some decent glass, Vortex, Nikon, they all have great products in that price range that'll get you out there. And a budget rifle around the $400, $500, $600 mark, you'll still be in the woods for under $1,000, and I feel like you really can't complain with that. So budget to spend about $1,000 between glass and a rifle, and you should be in good shape to get out there. Alright, now on the subject of glass, the next thing we're going to touch on is binoculars. Depending on the type of hunting you're doing, you might not necessarily need a pair of binoculars right away, but for, I'd say, probably 70 to 80% of applications, you're going to need some form of binoculars. I would steer clear of buying budget optics if at all possible when it comes to anything, whether it's scopes, binos, rangefinders. Spend a little bit extra, and there's still budget-friendly options from good manufacturers. My first binoculars were these ones here. These are Leupold Rogues. They're very much along their entry-level line, but still you're getting that Leupold quality. They were really good for me. They're 8x25s. A lot of the hunting we do here is very thick cover, so I didn't have to glass far, so I didn't need anything with a long reach. So these were a budget-friendly option that were priced more competitively than some of the other ones that got me out in the field. They're still a great pair of second binoculars. My wife loves these because of the fact that they're small, they're easy to handle, they fit her a lot better, so they're still fully functional. They were on sale for, I want to say they were about $80, $80 or $100. Spend at least that. Don't buy those $40 specials. They're only going to do you a disservice. They're not going to help you out. Spend at least that. If you can, always spend a little bit extra. Since then, I've upgraded to Vortex optics. These were great at the time. I looked at some Nikons as well. The Monarchs were great as well. What sold me on these at the time, I want to say, same thing, I think they were on sale. So absolutely shop sales if you can. The other thing that sold me on these was the fact that Vortex has a really good no-fault warranty with their products. So if I happen to take a tumble, I smash these up doing what they're designed to do, I send them in, they're going to send me a brand new pair of binoculars. Buy once, cry once, right? You can't argue with a company that's going to stand behind their products like that. I have never had to use their warranty as far as a reliability standpoint. So the glass, the optics, everything else has been really good. Go for the higher end glass, you're going to get better results. There's nothing worse than trying to glass something up and fogging out and not being able to see. So keep that in mind. Spend a little bit extra on the optics if at all you can, whether it's binos, rangefinders, glass. Spend the money on that before you spend the money on other things. Okay. Carrying on down the line with glass, we're going to go to rangefinders, which is the same sort of idea. You're not going to need one in every application. You probably don't need to buy one of these right out of the gate, but try and keep it higher on your list of things that you're going to get, just because it's going to make you more accurate, more confident in your shooting if you can exact ranges, right? This was my first rangefinder. I actually borrowed this from a buddy for a hunting trip. It's still living with me about 6 years later, so I should probably get this back to him, to be honest. This was a Canadian Tire Tasco special. I have a long list of gripes that go along with this thing, but it got me in the woods. It got the job done well enough. It worked. It'll get you by, but if you can, try not to cheap out on this. I'd rather you hold off a couple months or even a year and then get into something a little bit higher quality if you can. What I've upgraded to since then is I'm running right now a Nikon Laser 30. This particular one here has got a range out to 1,600 yards, whereas I think the original Tasco that I had there is good to about 300. Keep in mind, the advertised range is not the range that you're going to get when it comes to soft targets like a deer, a bear, elk, anything along those lines. They don't reflect the same way hard targets do. So even though this advertises 1,600 yards, realistically cut that in half. So I would trust it to give me an accurate reading on a deer at around 700 to 800 yards. So keep that in mind when you're buying equipment like this. If you can, get a rangefinder that'll get you out to 1,600, 1,800, 2,000 yards. It sounds like a long distance. You may think you're never going to glass stuff that far or shoot that far, but remember that you're working with about half the advertised distance that's on there, and if you read the fine print, they will flat out tell you that. So keep that in mind, and again, I'm going to drive this point home a third time. Spend money on optics if at all possible. Okay, now that we've talked about the gear end of it, we're also going to touch on the clothing end of it. I know especially with camo clothing right now, there's a million different options. There's great advertising campaigns out there that are telling you that you need all this fancy stuff. And I'm not going to slag them. Kuiu, Firstlite, Sitka, Scree, they all make fantastic products. What I want you to understand about that stuff, though, is that it's performance clothing. You're not paying for the fact that it's camouflage. If you were hiking or mountaineering or trail running, whatever the case may be, you're going to buy clothes that's going to perform well for the job that you're doing. So you're going to spend extra on brands like Columbia, that sort of thing, Arc'teryx. They make lots of great products that maybe aren't necessarily geared towards hunters, but they're performance products for the time that you're spending in the woods. So when you're spending bigger money on brands like Kuiu, you're paying for the performance of that clothing. So you're paying for lighter clothing that wicks away moisture better. So that's what you're paying for. So if you can afford it, by all means, you're going to get a better product, I think, bottom line, if you can buy into one of those brands. But don't feel like you have to. When I started out, I bought off the sale rack at Cabela's. Their Red Hen brand is great. For example, one of my key pieces of kit still is this Red Hen jacket here. It's one of their puffy jackets. I want to say on sale it was about 80 bucks. It's super comfortable, it's versatile, it still travels with me everywhere. There's no reason it can't perform. So don't feel like you have to spend a fortune on camo clothing. That being said, I've also slowly began to upgrade my gear. This particular one here is a Kuiu Peloton. It breathes better, it's more comfortable, it makes a great base layer, and I find that it's more durable and it performs better, to be completely honest. So if I had to have a choice and I could only take one of them, I would absolutely take my Kuiu over my Redhead. But that being said, it's not because the camouflage doesn't make a difference, right? And also take into account the type of hunting you're doing. If you're mostly truck hunting, the camouflage honestly doesn't matter. Wear whatever makes you comfortable. If you're going to be hiking in, especially if you're doing alpine hunts for mule deer, goats, sheep, anything like that, you're going to want clothing that performs better and is lighter. So you're going to want something along those lines. But again, it's performance clothing. It's not because it's camouflage. So it might give you an edge because it's going to allow you to spend more time in the field. And as a byproduct of that, you're going to have more chances and better odds of success. So the more time you can spend in the field comfortably, obviously, the better your odds are of being successful in your hunt because you can put in the time to get there. But again, that being said, you don't need to shell out a ton of money. So if you're going to save money on anything to get you out in the woods, to be completely honest, save money on the camo clothing. There's nothing saying you need to spend $300 on a jacket. The camo isn't going to make you a better hunter. That's not what it's about. So if you're on a budget, if you're trying to save money there first before you save money on other things. Okay, and now on the subject of clothing and things that I would prefer you not save money on, footwear. My original pair of boots were Cabela's house brand boots. Same thing. They were on sale at the time. The budget was tight. They worked great. I think I used them for 4 or 5 seasons. I had no issues with them. They were actually fairly waterproof. They performed pretty well. What I've upgraded to since then, currently I'm running these Zamberlans. These have been fantastic boots. They've been completely watertight. They're super comfortable. And that's one of the things. Make sure your feet are dry and they're comfortable, because that can easily make or break your hunt. Spend the extra, buy a decent pair of boots if you can. I'm not saying you need to spend $500 or $600 out the gate, but spend the most that you're able to budget for these. I would sooner you spend a little extra money on footwear than on jackets. So, and one of the other things I want you to understand, when you're spending money on more premium products, you're also going to get the customer service aspect that goes along with premium brands. So these Amberlands, point in case, I had an issue with them on my third hunt with them. And what happened was I had a hardware failure here. 2 of these tabs ended up breaking. Just over torqued them. It happens. I'm not gonna fault them for it. Every now and then something lets go. What got me was how they handled it. So I was in a bind. I had about a 14-day turnaround before I was going out on an archery hunt, and these were the boots I was planning on wearing. So I was kind of stuck. So I reached out to Zamberlan. Zamberlan USA got back to me right away. They were very responsive about it. We had a bit of a communication glitch dealing with the Canadian end of it and transferring the information back and forth. But they got back to me, and what they ended up doing, because we were getting tight on time, is they couriered me a brand new pair of boots overnight to get me back in the woods and get me going. Now that's huge. That saved my hunt. That saved me having to figure out some issues. And that was above and beyond what I was expecting from them. But that's the type of customer service that you're paying for. So when you're spending a little bit more on some bigger brands like Zamberlan, like Kuiu, Firstlite, Vortex, if you have an issue with the product, you're more likely to get it resolved quickly and efficiently, and in a manner that's going to keep you happy, keep you coming back, and get you back into the woods. Okay, one of the last things I'm going to touch on is something that right now there's a lot of hype around. There's a lot of good marketing, good advertising campaigns that tell you if you buy the scent control stuff, you're going to be able to fool an animal's nose. It's going to give you this edge. Yes, they help, but I mean, realistically, there's tens of thousands of years of evolution that go into prey animals' noses and senses to be able to detect predators and keep them alive. $20 that you're spending at the outdoor store on the body wash or the laundry detergent or the deodorant is not going to fool tens of thousands of years of evolution. It just doesn't work that way. There's plenty of tests that have been done out there with scent dogs and that sort of stuff. They pick up on it. It will give you a little bit of an edge. So I mean, especially if you're archery hunting, if you're blind hunting, yeah, there's pros to it, right? And I mean, I do own the body wash, I do own the laundry detergent, but they're multi-tier systems. You have to, like, if you're going to use the body wash, then you got to make sure that you wash your towel in the laundry detergent. The stuff that you're going to wear out, don't put it on before you go. Keep it in a bag that's airtight, that limits the amount of smells that are going to get in there. Because if you stop at Tim Hortons on the way to the blind, or you walk through a parking lot, scents transfer. All that stuff transfers onto your clothing. You're going to eliminate any of the pros that you gained by using any of this stuff here. So if you use it as part of a multi-tier system, it is going to help for sure. But especially if you're on a budget, don't spend a ton of money on this stuff, and don't rely on it to fool animals' noses, because it's just not going to happen. If you're going to spend money on something, what I want you to spend money on is spend the $8 and buy some wind detector. This can make or break your hunt. You don't have to necessarily go out and buy this stuff. I have used a lighter. I have used dried leaves to double check which way the wind's blowing. There's a few different things you can use, but spend the $7 or $8, buy one of these. It could honestly save you, because there's times where the wind isn't necessarily cut and dry north or south or east or west. It swirls, it does all sorts of things, and being able to detect that and make sure that you can stay downwind is going to give you an advantage when it comes to stocking in on stuff. Now we'll touch more on that when it comes to the actual stocking and tracking end of this video, but spend the $8 on this. Don't worry about spending $20 on the other stuff, because you're still going to smell like you. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap that up there. Thank you for watching this. If you're still watching this, I know it's a bit of a dry subject, so I've tried to keep it as entertaining as possible, and I've tried to keep it as short as possible. There's only so condensed that I can make it and still effectively kind of go over the gear that you guys are going to need going into the woods. There's also a million different gear options out there right now, so I've tried to touch on the main ones that you're going to run into before you get out into the woods. If you've got questions about anything more specific, or there's something you've got on your mind or that you're thinking about using or not using, by all means, reach out in the comment section, shoot me a message. I'm always going to try and get back to you guys and give you an honest answer. If I can't answer your question, I'll try and point you somewhere that will, and hopefully we'll get you guys sorted out and figured out. But basically what I want you to get out of this entire thing here is that you don't need to spend a ton of money to get out into the woods. There's lots of budget options, whether it be for rifles, for clothing, for any other piece of gear. Don't feel like you have to spend a fortune. If you're spending bigger money, spend a little more on your optics, on your glass. Your footwear is going to be a big thing, but don't feel like you have to break the bank to get out into the woods and get meat in the freezer. You don't need to. And as always, thanks for your guys' continued support. If this was helpful to you, if this is useful, hit that like button, hit subscribe. It helps kind of work the algorithms and get the content out to the people that can use it. And hopefully we can get you guys out in the woods and get you out there on a budget that works for you and get you being successful. So until next time, thanks again, and we'll catch you guys out there.